Wow, Dr. Blake. Either you have to date me in Sheriff Carter's body, or date Sheriff Carter in mine. It's quite a Sophie's choice.
Grace, we have to fix this.
Honey, don't worry, I will take care of it.
Well, I think we've done a lot of homages to various sci-fi tropes, and this sort of body swapping, brain swapping is one of those stories. And it really allowed, I think, all of us to have fun with, okay, what would be the best combination of swaps? And at first we had all different actors swapping with each other, but knowing that from a directorial standpoint, it could be challenging if you had too many swaps, so we decided that it would make sense for Carter to be the central focus of that, and to be able to watch Colin be able to channel 3 different actors as they all channeled him in the same episode was really fun.
Sheriff Grab-Ass. Yeah, oh, this is a trip, isn't it?
And I won't say that the network or studio didn't believe that our cast was going to pull this one off, but there was certainly concern, mostly I think about whether I could pull it off. I think there was that conversation where they're trying to be so kind. They said, God, you know, we really love the script. How do you plan to actually do this? Maybe you need to cover yourself and have some convention of when an actor is in somebody else's body, they see their reflection and it's the other person, so you really know who is in whose body. And I really felt like this was one of those times where if you did that, it was going to cheapen the experience. So I think as a director, though, it was about how do you make those transitions through the tunnel really clean. I mean, there are certain devices that are obviously, I think, well known. Trying not to reinvent the wheel, but to sort of have this being John Malkovich kind of feel to it was what I was going for. And what was fun is watching our actors channeling each other, and when they look at a reflection, they see where they are, which body they're in. And I wanted that idea of those reflections to kind of carry through thematically through the episode.
Oh, man. Not again.
Want some company?
You know, you're basically writing what you envision at the same time, and sometimes you don't know if you're going to really be able to put that on film the same way you're writing it, and he was really able to do that.
In terms of being in the director's chair, the very first scene actually was the bedroom scene when Carter and Allison are waking up. And I'm sure that there must have been apprehension on the part of our crew and our cast about whether I was going to be any good at this, and how much work they were going to have to do to make sure I didn't completely derail it.
Yeah, Jaime, obviously knowing everything about the show, being behind the camera, it benefits in like a million ways, but probably the biggest is that because he's also the writer, he can write the scene, rewrite the scene if there's a little problem. He can just do it right there. And there's no sort of like, oh, maybe we should call Jaime to see if this is okay. Because he's like, I'm Jaime. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know how that was gonna go. Only because he's never directed. People that direct are usually have on-set experience and they're sort of used to all the technical stuff that goes along with the editing and the working with actors. And he was really, really great, and I was really proud of him.
Is so sort of deferential and so respectful to everybody the whole time. You know, like he'd come out with his ideas, says, but if there's a better way, let me know. You know, if you guys have a problem with it, let me know. If this is good for lighting, let me know. And so it was just a joy. It was lovely. And he wrote himself a smaller episode than he writes any of us when we direct. Like really contained, really sort of, sweet, character-driven. What do we get? We get like, 2 suns in the sky, or like, a race around the moon. What does he get? A lovely character-driven piece. Nice.
From my standpoint, directing it, I obviously know certain ways that the actors say lines and certain expressions and mannerisms. And I had suggested really watch each other, really start to study each other when you're either in a scene or when you're not in the scene and you're watching other people working.
I remember Niall and Colin would say each other's lines, and then they would mimic.
Colin, he would sort of study his face when he did it, and you ended up with that sort of pursed, tight, kind of look that Niall definitely has, and Colin was just like, he really wanted to get into those details.
Well, I was a perfect gentleman.
You didn't say who you were either, Zane. You didn't?
I thought I was dreaming. He knew.
You really find out how talented Colin is at doing comedy in this episode.
Actually, his impression of Allison was probably It was freaky only because it was convincing and that he was trying to be a woman. So that was bizarre. And his impression of Fargo was almost spot on. Like, I was watching him, and for a moment, you would forget who you were actually looking at.
I remember specifically there's one scene where I come in as Jack, and I have a line, something along the lines of,
Is this my joking face? No, this is not my face at all.
After one of the takes, Colin was like, do I really do that? And then everyone was like, yeah, that was pretty much you, exactly. Colin's such a funny guy, but he walks really normally, and he like does things in a really normal way. So it was almost difficult for me to do that because I'm sort of like, I'm always, you know, flailing my arms around and everything. So to kind of keep that in and keep it a bit more reserved was a bit of a challenge, but it was fun.
You're pretending to be all these other people. You know, and you've been thinking about it for about a week. You know, okay, their mannerisms and what can I do? What can I do? And it's way easier if you're standing and moving. You have a whole other set of tools that you can work with. For the scene with Niall in the bed and for the scene with Salli, I'm sitting in a bed. I can't adjust my posture, you know, and half of it's for camera. So the back has to be up, and you know, you have to sit like this. No, don't, and so you're locked, you know, from the chest down. So I sort of had my shoulders, you know, and my arms to deal with. So it was sort of making some quick choices to sell what I could sell.
Colin has a really animated face, and he uses his forehead a lot. So I had to start training myself to kind of like bring the eyebrows up, and like, everything's inquisitive, and you're always thinking. So playing what Colin plays, it took a lot more energy than I'm used to delivering on set. At the end of every day, I was wiped.
Allison is so different and a little more laid back and subtle. Just being bigger made it feel more like Carter, and even physically doing much more than I would do, and that really helped me find Carter.
Well, the data shows that the hyperactive axonal cluster is serving as an antenna. And it's not transmitting, it's receiving.
From what? He told me he just got a little more girly and a little more up, you know, he would sit upright a little more, and I was like, okay, I don't think I'm like that.
It was tough because you run that thing where you want to go really, you know, part of you really wants to go sketch and really character it up. And tempering that was interesting for me. I'm not sure if I tempered it enough. I'll let you know when I see it.
Well, if you're Carter, then why do you sound like me?
Because I am you. We just swap brains.
This is a seriously messed up dream.
Ew! Oh!
For this particular episode, part of the challenge was that you know, I had written it to be rather self-contained, so that it wasn't going to be a giant, you know, monumental production where I could, you know, get into trouble as a director. I wanted it to be fairly contained to our sets, mostly be working with our actors. But you also want it to look cool. You don't want it to feel too small or dull. So making the surgical theater look so great and to be so shooter-friendly, where I could have the viewing room up above and I could shoot down below, and we could get those sort of different perspectives, all the lit walls and all the things that were going on.
For the head brain surgery gag itself, that involved props. It involved the two of us and the art department in general. It involved the set dressers, because they had to find the chair and the appliance over the head. But it also had to involve the visual effects team, because they had to figure out what the character Allison was holding in her high-tech gloves and what this effect looked like as she was manipulating the operation from outside of Carter's head. So that was a bit of a brain jump for us to even process, you know, how this operation would work in the way that she couldn't touch or use tools of any sort aside from the probe that got set on the back of the skull.
Well, the brain's always complicated because if you're really seeing this, what's the area look like as you're traveling from outside the head, inside the head? Is it just dark, and now you're going through a skull, and is the skull only so thick, and now you're getting to the brain, and are you traveling through peaks and valleys? And there's a bunch of different interpretations on how to do it. We're like, okay, let's just get in there. Let's get something that looks really good, and then let's get down to the place we're trying to get to, you know, to sell the story point.
Who gave you the authority to reactivate the Matrix mainframe? Shut it down.
The Matrix mainframe was something, it was one of the design elements we came up with in the beginning, and that was that round plinth with the supercomputers on it with the light effect in them and all that. And that was a lot of fun to design.
I think the first design brief they came to us with was make it look like giant IBM
Supercomputers,
computers
yeah.
or supercomputers. So we took that flavor and made them angled and tapered and gave them vents on the front with, again, lights inside, arranged them in a circular configuration, had cables coming out of them, and this
well, it's
became
cool
this
'cause
giant matrix computer device. I think it did the job.
Take a look. Ooh, steak. This is going to be a good experiment.
We ended up at the last minute trying to find a couple of plinths that could essentially act as the units that the meat sat on.
Teleportation thing,
Teleportation devices that we'd built in the past. We often reappropriate or recycle set pieces, especially if it's an overnight sort of turnover. So we found the two set pieces. They looked great. They had already a built-in lighting effect that allowed them to light up when needed. And the rest was really our special effects department and our props people.
How does the reconstructed tissue compare to the original?
Darn near identical.
Oh, look out, look out, look out, look out, look out.
There was a malfunction in this process, and the meat is supposed to explode. Well, it's real meat, and about a 10-pound big slab of beef, and we cannot explode that in front of actors or talent or extras or anybody because it's the amorphous quality of the tissue is very unpredictable. So we had to do the aftermath of this exploded meat in front of Sheriff Carter's face. We created faux meat out of gel wax and methicil dyed to look like exploded meat part and just actually threw it at him, and he wore it well. We've done a lot of unusual things to Colin, so he's used to it now, and he's a very good sport.
But didn't they blow up all the meat in a test the day before?
There was a interesting test the day before.
I was on a survey, and our producer came up to me with a cell phone and said, "Tim, what are you guys doing back at the stage?" I said, "Why? What's wrong?" He said, "Well, apparently there's chunks of meat 40 feet up the back wall of stage A2, and a bunch of scared people because of a loud noise." I went, "Oh, let me make a call." So I called my guys, and they had gone out and purchased a bunch of cheap steaks and slabs, and, well, we better go big or go home. So went around behind the building just to do a little test, and it ended up startling some people and creating a mess. Anyway, we referred to that as Meatgate.
So tell me, have you noticed any changes in your sleep patterns?
Like waking up in another body, maybe?
Come again?
Zane, who's a sturdy young actor, we did not double him. He did the whole gag himself.
The very first practice run that we did was actually about 30 feet high. So I climbed up, and I remember looking down and thinking, okay, this is higher than I did it at the rock climbing facility, but now everyone's watching, so I'm gonna do this. And David Jaycock's our stunt coordinator. He's amazing. He just asked me, he said, "Niall, are you comfortable? Are you confident?" And I said, "Yeah." And he just counted 3, 2, 1, and I just let go and fell back. After that, though, we didn't go as high, but it was still a high fall.
Locations found us that amazing rock climbing gym, and we found a way to, give us an entrance from there to Global Dynamics where it could look and feel really seamless.
We ended up taking their foyer area and cleaning that out and giving it, again, the Global Dynamics look where it was linear and stainless steel and very official.
It was kind of like the typical thing that happens on locations. You go in, you paint something, you put a plug in, you add a door, you put in some Global Dynamics logos. And other than that, it was stunts and
camera work, a lot of high-angle camera work. And then it will be visual effects as well when they get Martha flying around the space.
Oh, yeah.
I think when these items get into the final cut, it'll be quite a neat sequence.
We always wanted to tech Martha up quite a bit. So we were pretty much tied to what the prop looked like and what production wound up building and could afford to build and duplicate from a production standpoint. Season 5 wasn't the case anymore. So can we now take Martha and make her what we've always wanted her to look like?
We wanted to give her a new look for our Matrix Eureka. And the problem is when you go that way and you get a chance to sort of reinvent something and you like it better, you don't want to go back to the version that you had before.
It's great that Jaime said, let's keep going for the cool rather than the continuity, because they come out of the Matrix and maybe they just built a new Martha based on the information they learned in the Matrix. See how Syfy works? It's very easy to work that into the story if you really want.
I want to start building memories with you. Forever. Starting now.
This is a couple who sort of danced around being together, and it just felt like, why don't we have Carter finally just say, no, I'm tired of waiting. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to plan it. I know what I want. This whole fiasco that we've gone through has reminded me just how close we could come to having it all fall apart. And so let's do this thing. And it isn't, thought out. He hasn't made a plan, but he's going against his nature, and he's just diving in.
Allison. Will you marry me?
French fry in the finger. Proposal, acceptance, marriage, happiness.
Bruce Miller, my co-showrunner, who has been such an amazing partner in all this, he was the one who said, maybe we should try to do it sooner and make it more unexpected. And whenever you can go against audience expectations, it's a good thing.
We're, 6 seasons in, and I've fought it and fought it and fought it forever on the show, like less kissing, less, all this stuff. And for years I fought it. And now I finally feel it's appropriate, and I feel like, yeah, they've earned it. I mean, 6 years in, and coincidentally, it's the right time. It's the last season, so timed out well. And I think when the world rewards you with stuff like that, then it was the right time. For us, for us, it's the right time.
It's sweet, and it's very Jack Carter, the way the proposal happens, in particular with the onion ring. I say yes.
And that's a cut. I had so much fun. I felt like it was such a privilege that I was getting to direct. And I think that I made the right choice in just saying, let the actors act. And they're going to convince us, and we're never going to question who's in whose body. I think that they can pull it off. And I think they really did. My hope is I think that this will be, one of those episodes that the fans really remember.
Champagne for everyone!